Commander Lee Jun sat in his small office aboard the space station orbiting Earth, staring at the classified message that had just arrived. The red priority seal meant this was serious business, the kind that could change everything for humanity. He read it 3 times before the words really sank in. The Vellani Empire wanted to make a deal. For over 200 years, humans had been exploring space, meeting dozens of alien species, making friends and enemies along the way. But the Vellani had always been different. They lived behind an invisible wall, never showing themselves, never letting anyone visit their worlds. All anyone knew was that they controlled the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Now they were offering humanity something incredible, their legendary shield technology. The same shields that had kept their empire safe for thousands of years. With that technology, human ships could travel deeper into dangerous space, protect entire planets from attacks, maybe even survive encounters with the hostile machine races at the galaxy's edge. But there was a catch. There was always a catch. The Vellani wanted a marriage alliance. One human would marry one of their kind, sealing the deal between their species. It sounded crazy, like something from an old fairy tale, but the message was dead serious. The bride would be Kiravel, daughter of the Vellani supreme leader. The wedding would happen on their homeworld, and whoever volunteered would be going in completely blind. Jun leaned back in his chair, thinking about his life. At 32, he had spent his entire adult life in the diplomatic corps, traveling from planet to planet, negotiating treaties, solving problems between different species. He was good at his job, maybe the best, but he had never found time for a personal life. No wife, no kids, no real home, except whatever ship he was assigned to. The message said volunteers had 1 day to step forward. Command would review applications and pick the best candidate. Jun knew dozens of diplomats would apply. This was the kind of mission that could make someone's career, assuming they survived it. Marriage to an alien princess, bringing humanity, its greatest technological advancement ever, becoming a hero to both species. But that wasn't what made Jun reach for his communication pad. He had spent years working with alien cultures, learning their languages, understanding their customs. He knew how to adapt, how to find common ground with beings who looked nothing like humans. Maybe that experience would help him make this impossible marriage work. The real reason he volunteered was simpler and harder to explain. Jun had always believed that understanding between different species was the key to peace in the galaxy. Too many wars started because people feared what they didn't understand. If he could show that a human and a Vellani could build something together, maybe it would inspire others. He typed his application quickly before he could change his mind. Name, rank, experience, qualifications. At the end, he wrote one line that he hoped would make the difference. I believe this marriage could be the beginning of true friendship between our peoples, not just a political arrangement. 3 hours later, his communication pad chimed. He had been selected. In 1 week, he would leave for Tau Ceti 7, where a Vellani ship would pick him up. His bride's name was Kiravel, and that was literally all he knew about the woman he was going to marry. The training facility on Lunar Base looked more like a library than a military compound. Jun spent his days surrounded by holographic projectors, language learning pods, and cultural simulation chambers. Everything humanity knew about the Vellani was stored here, which wasn't much, but it was enough to keep him busy for months. The first thing he learned was their language. Vellani words flowed like music, with tones that could change meaning completely. A simple greeting could become an insult if you got the pitch wrong. Jun practiced for hours each day, repeating phrases until his throat was sore. The AI instructor was patient but demanding, correcting every mistake until he could speak basic Vellani without embarrassing himself. But the real breakthrough came when he received his first message from Kiravel. It arrived on his 2nd day of training, a simple text in perfect English. Hello, Lee Jun, I hope you are well. I am curious about your favorite human food. Do you enjoy the spicy dishes I have read about? Jun stared at the message for 10 minutes before responding. What do you say to your future wife when you've never met her? He decided to be honest. Hello, Kiravel, I love spicy food, especially Korean dishes from my homeland. What about you? Do Vellani eat spicy food? Her reply came within hours. We do not experience taste the same way humans do, but I am fascinated by the concept. Perhaps you can teach me to appreciate it when we meet. That simple exchange started something neither of them expected. Every day brought new messages, longer conversations, deeper questions. Kiravel wanted to know everything about human culture. She asked about music, art, sports, movies, books. She was especially curious about human emotions and relationships. Why? Do humans cry when they are happy? She wrote one day. I have watched your entertainment videos and seen this many times. It seems contradictory. June found himself typing long explanations about joy, relief, overwhelming feelings that had no other outlet. He told her about his grandmother's funeral, how he had cried not from sadness, but from gratitude for having known such a wonderful person. Kiravel's response surprised him. Your grandmother sounds like she would have been a wise advisor. In our culture, we honor the departed by sharing their best stories. Would you tell me one? So he did. He told her about his grandmother's terrible cooking and how the whole family pretended to love it, about her fierce protection of stray cats, about the way she could make anybody laugh even on their worst day. Kiravel listened through text, asking questions that showed she really understood the stories. As weeks turned into months, June realized he was falling for someone he had never seen. It started with looking forward to her messages each morning. Then he began thinking about her responses while he trained, wondering what she would think about different human customs he was learning about in reverse through her questions. She had a sense of humor that caught him off guard. When he mentioned that humans sometimes kept pets, she wrote back, "Do the pets know they are pets, or do they think humans are their pets?" When he explained human dating rituals, she responded, "So humans spend months deciding if they want to spend time together, but we are supposed to spend our lives together after one meeting. Your species is very optimistic." The conversations weren't always light. They talked about loneliness, duty, fear of the unknown. Kiravel admitted she was nervous about marrying someone from a completely different species. June confessed he sometimes wondered if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, but somehow, through words on a screen, they were building something real. The Vellani ship looked nothing like any human vessel June had ever seen. Instead of metal and sharp angles, it seemed to be grown rather than built, with smooth curves that reminded him of a giant seashell. The hull shifted colors as he watched, moving from deep blue to silver to something that wasn't quite purple. When he stepped aboard at the transfer station near Tau Ceti 7, he felt like he was entering a living creature rather than a machine. There was no crew to greet him. The ship's AI spoke in gentle tones, explaining that Vellani technology was too sensitive for non-Vellani to operate. June would be a passenger for the entire week-long journey to their homeworld. His quarters were comfortable but strange, with walls that glowed softly and furniture that seemed to mold itself to his body when he sat down. The first day was the hardest. June had spent his whole career being busy, solving problems, making decisions. Now he had nothing to do but wait and think. He tried reading the cultural files he had brought, but his mind kept wandering. What if Kiravel didn't like him in person? What if he said something wrong at the wedding? What if this whole thing was a terrible mistake? Then, on his second morning, he found something waiting in his communication panel. It wasn't a text message, this time. The screen showed a small file labeled, "For my future husband. Listen when you feel alone." June put on his headphones and pressed play. At first, he heard nothing but silence. Then slowly, music began to fill his ears. It wasn't like any human music he knew. There were no drums, no guitars, no recognizable instruments at all. Instead, it sounded like wind moving through crystal caves, like water flowing over smooth stones, like the songbirds might sing if they lived among the stars. The melody was beautiful and sad and hopeful all at the same time. It made him think of watching sunsets from space, of quiet moments between storms, of waiting for something wonderful that might never come. When it ended after 10 minutes, June realized he had tears in his eyes. The next day brought another file. This one was labeled Poetry of the Deep Gardens. When he opened it, he heard Kiravel's voice for the first time. She was reading in Villani, her words flowing like music. Even though he couldn't understand everything, he recognized the rhythm and beauty of her language. She had included a translation, but June found himself listening to the original version over and over just to hear her voice. Each day brought new gifts. Songs about starlight and growing things, poems about hope and change and the courage needed to love someone different from yourself. Stories about Villani heroes who had faced impossible choices and found ways to succeed through understanding, rather than force. But the most precious gift came on the 5th day. It was a simple recording of Kiravel talking, not reading poetry or sharing cultural treasures, just speaking to him like they were sitting in the same room. "I wanted you to hear my voice speaking your language," she said in careful English. "I have been practicing for months. I know I make mistakes, but I want you to know that I am thinking of you during this journey. I imagine you sitting alone on that ship, perhaps feeling nervous or excited or afraid. I want you to know that I feel all those things too. In 3 days we will meet face to face for the first time. I cannot promise that everything will be perfect, but I can promise that I will try to be the wife you deserve." June played that message dozens of times, memorizing every word, every slight accent, every pause where she searched for the right phrase. By the time Velen Prime appeared outside his window like a blue-green jewel, he felt like he already knew the woman he was going to marry. The morning of his wedding, June woke up in a guest house that felt like it was carved from a single massive tree. The walls curved naturally around him, and soft light filtered through what looked like leaves but might have been something else entirely. He had slept surprisingly well for someone about to marry a complete stranger from another species. A gentle chime told him his attendants had arrived. 3 Villani entered his room, moving with a grace that made them seem like they were floating rather than walking. They were the first of Kiravel's people he had seen in person, and June tried not to stare. They were tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer like moonlight on water. Their faces were kind but alien, with large eyes that reflected light in ways human eyes never could. They dressed him in ceremonial robes that felt lighter than air, but looked like they were woven from starlight itself. The fabric changed color as he moved, shifting from deep blue to silver to gold. Over his head they placed a mask that covered his entire face. It was beautiful but strange, carved with symbols he didn't recognize and fitted with some kind of filter that made everything look soft and dreamlike. "The mask represents the unknown future," one of his attendants explained in careful English. "You cannot see clearly until the moment of commitment arrives. It is the same for your bride." The wedding would take place in the Heart Cathedral, a living tree so old and massive that entire buildings had been grown into its trunk and branches. As they walked through the streets of the Villani capital, June saw crowds of curious onlookers. Some seemed excited, others worried. All of them stared at the human who was about to become part of their royal family. The cathedral took his breath away, even through the filtered vision of his mask. The tree rose higher than any building he had ever seen, its trunk so wide that 100 people could hold hands around it, and still not reach all the way. The ceremony space was carved into the heart of the tree itself, with natural alcoves and flowing curves that made it feel both ancient and alive. But the most amazing thing was how the tree responded to the emotions of everyone inside it. As guests filled the space, the walls began to glow with soft colors. Nervous energy showed as flickering yellow lights. Excitement bloomed in warm orange patches. Hope created streams of gentle blue that flowed along the natural grain of the wood. June took his place at the front of the cathedral, his heart pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. The tree around him pulsed with red light, probably reflecting his anxiety. He tried to calm down, thinking about all the conversations he had shared with Kiravel, all the ways she had shown kindness and intelligence and humor through their messages. Then the music started. It was the same type of crystalline sound he had heard in her recordings, but now it filled the entire space, resonating through the living wood of the tree. The congregation fell silent as a figure appeared at the far end of the cathedral. Even through his mask, June could see that Kiravel was beautiful. She moved toward him with the same flowing grace as her attendants, wearing robes that seemed to be made of captured moonbeams. Her own mask was more delicate than his, silver and intricate, covering her face but leaving her graceful neck and shoulders visible. They met in the center of the cathedral, where the tree's heartwood formed, a natural altar. The officiant, an ancient Vellani with robes that sparkled like the night sky, began the ceremony in both languages. June repeated the vows he had memorized, promising to honor and protect not just his bride, but the alliance between their peoples. Finally, the moment came. "You may now see each other truly," the officiant said. Together they removed their masks. When June first saw Kiravel's face, time seemed to stop. Her skin had the soft glow of pearls, shifting between silver and the palest blue as emotions played across her features. Her eyes were large and warm, the color of amber honey but with depth that seemed to hold tiny stars. She was beautiful in a way that was completely alien, yet somehow familiar, like seeing a sunset on a world you'd never visited but always dreamed about. "Hello, husband," she said softly in English, and her voice was even more musical in person than it had been in the recordings. "Hello, wife," June replied, and they both smiled at the strangeness of those words. Their honeymoon destination was Ethan, a city that literally floated in the clouds of Valen Prime's upper atmosphere. The buildings were made of the same living crystal as Vellani ships, connected by bridges that swayed gently in the wind. From their suite's balcony, June could see layers of clouds stretching to the horizon in every direction, painted in colors that changed with the light of Velen Prime's twin suns. The first few days were awkward in the way that all new relationships are, except with the added challenge of being different species. Kiravel didn't eat the same foods as humans, and June had to learn not to be startled when her skin changed colors with her moods. She glowed soft pink when she was happy, shifted to deeper blue when she was thinking hard, and turned an interesting shade of gold when she laughed at his attempts to pronounce Vellani words correctly. But they found common ground quickly. Both of them loved puzzles and strategy games. Kiravel taught June a Vellani game that was like chess, but played in 3 dimensions with pieces that could change form. June showed her Earth games like Go and Poker, which fascinated her because they involved reading your opponent's intentions. That's when June discovered something amazing about his new wife. Kiravel could sense emotions, not just see them in skin color changes like other Vellani, but actually feel what others were feeling. It wasn't mind reading exactly, but she could tell when someone was lying, when they were afraid, when they were planning something. "It's considered rude to use this ability without permission," she explained one evening, as they watched the sunset paint the clouds below them in brilliant oranges and purples. "But with you, I don't need to try. Your emotions are so strong, so honest. I can feel your confusion sometimes, your worry about whether this marriage will work, but also your hope and your growing affection." June felt exposed at first, knowing she could sense his feelings. But gradually he realized it meant they couldn't lie to each other, couldn't hide behind polite words when something was bothering them. It forced them to be completely honest, and somehow that made everything easier. Their first real test came on their 4th day in Ethan. June was trying to master a particularly difficult Vellani breakfast food that kept changing texture when you touched it, while Kiravel watched with obvious amusement. Suddenly alarms began sounding throughout the city. A Vellani official appeared on their communication screen, speaking rapidly in the musical language. Kiravel's skin immediately shifted to a deep, worried blue as she listened. "What's wrong?" June asked. "Space pirates are attacking Research Station Gamma," she said, her voice tight with concern. "It's where our scientists study new planetary systems. The station has no defenses, and the nearest military ships are hours away." June's mind immediately shifted into tactical mode. How many pirates? What kind of ships? What are the station's capabilities? As Kiravel translated the incoming reports, June began seeing patterns, weaknesses in the pirates' approach that the Vellani defenders were missing. And Kiravel, sensing his thoughts and confidence, began to understand his strategic thinking in ways that amazed them both. "I have an idea," June said, "but we're going to need to work together." 6 months after their wedding, June barely recognized his own life. He and Kiravel had become the most talked-about couple in known space, not because of celebrity gossip, but because of what they had accomplished together. The pirate incident at Research Station Gamma had been just the beginning. Their success came from an unexpected combination. June's human ability to think quickly under pressure paired perfectly with Kiravel's empathic skills and deep understanding of alien psychology. When trade disputes arose between human colonies and Villani outposts, they could solve problems that had stumped diplomats for years. Their apartment on the diplomatic station orbiting Centauri Prime had become an unofficial embassy. Representatives from a dozen species would arrive seeking their help with everything from territorial disputes to cultural misunderstandings. June would analyze the political angles, while Kiravel sensed the real emotions behind formal negotiations. "The Andromedan ambassador is terrified," Kiravel would whisper during a tense meeting. "He's not being stubborn. He's afraid his people will think he's weak if he compromises." "Then we need to give him a way to save face," June would respond, already thinking of solutions that would let everyone claim victory. Their partnership worked so well, it made some people nervous. In the human colonies, there were whispers that June had been compromised, that his alien wife was manipulating him through her telepathic abilities. Some politicians questioned whether any human could remain loyal to their own species while married to an alien. The Villani had their own concerns. Traditional families worried that Kiravel was abandoning her people's ways, becoming too human in her thinking. Some council members suggested that her marriage was a mistake, that she was sharing too many Villani secrets with outsiders. The first real attack came through the media. A human news reporter named Director Park published a series of articles questioning June's loyalties. The headlines were sensational. "Has our hero gone native?" and "The alien influence on human policy." Park interviewed anonymous sources who claimed June was no longer thinking like a human, that his wife was controlling his mind. June tried to ignore the stories, but they hurt more than he expected. These were his own people questioning his integrity, his love for humanity. Kiravel could sense his pain, her skin shifting to sympathetic blues and greens when she saw him reading the articles. "They don't understand," she said one evening, as they watched ships coming and going from their apartment window. "They see our success and assume it must be artificial, that real cooperation between our species is impossible." "Maybe they're not entirely wrong," June said, surprising himself with his honesty. "6 months ago, I would have made decisions based purely on human interests. Now I find myself thinking about what's best for everyone involved. Have I changed too much?" Kiravel was quiet for a long moment, her skin cycling through thoughtful colors. "Do you remember the first problem we solved together? The mining dispute on Kepler Station?" June nodded. Human miners had been clashing with Villani researchers over rights to an asteroid rich in rare metals. Traditional diplomacy had failed for months. "You could have negotiated a deal that gave humans everything they wanted," Kiravel continued. "You had the leverage, but instead you found a solution that helped both sides prosper. Was that betraying humanity, or was that showing them a better way?" Before June could answer, their communication system chimed with an urgent message. The display showed Admiral Chen from Earth Command, her face grim with concern. "June, we need you and your wife back on Earth immediately," she said. "There's been an incident. Some people are calling for your marriage to be annulled and the alliance with the Villani to be terminated. The real test of their partnership was about to begin." 3 months after the assassination attempt, June was finally back to full strength. The scars from the energy blast had faded to thin silver lines across his chest, and Kiravel's healing abilities had worked better than any human medical technology. But the real healing had happened in their relationship. Facing death together had stripped away any remaining doubts about their marriage. They were living on New Harmony Station, a joint human-Villani research facility that had become their new home base. The station orbited a beautiful blue planet, where both species were working together to establish the first truly integrated colony. Every day brought new challenges, new successes, and new proof that cooperation between their peoples was not just possible, but profitable. June was in his office reviewing trade agreements when Kiravel appeared in the doorway. Something was different about her today. Her skin was glowing brighter than usual, cycling through colors he had never seen before, soft golds and warm pinks that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. "We need to talk," she said, and her voice carried a mixture of excitement and nervousness that made his heart skip. "Is everything okay?" June asked, immediately concerned. "Are you feeling sick? You look different." Kiravel closed the door behind her and sat down across from his desk. Her hands were shaking slightly, and her skin continued to shift through those strange, beautiful colors. "Went to see Dr. Martinez this morning," she said. "The human doctor, and also Dr. Veltar from our medical team. I wanted to be absolutely certain before I told you." June felt his stomach drop. After the attack, Kiravel had been having strange symptoms: fatigue, changes in her empathic abilities, unusual color patterns in her skin. The doctors had run dozens of tests but couldn't find anything wrong. "Certain about what?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Kiravel's skin suddenly blazed with pure golden light, brighter than he had ever seen it. "I'm pregnant, June. We're going to have babies." For a moment, June couldn't process what she had said. Pregnant. The medical experts from both species had said it was impossible. Human and Vellani biology were too different. They could love each other, work together, build a life together, but they could never have children. That's impossible," he said weakly. "That's what both doctors said at first." Kiravel laughed, tears streaming down her face. "They ran the tests 3 times, but it's true, June, and there's more. We're having twins." June stood up so fast his chair fell over. He walked around the desk and pulled Kiravel into his arms, holding her tight as the reality sank in. They were going to be parents. Their love had literally created something new in the galaxy. "How?" he whispered into her hair. "The doctors think it has something to do with our emotional bond," she said, her skin now pulsing with waves of joy and love. "My empathic connection to you, combined with the genetic compatibility we never knew we had. They're calling it a miracle of evolution." Over the next few days, news of the pregnancy spread throughout human and Vellani space. Scientists were fascinated, politicians were calculating the implications, and ordinary people were simply amazed. The couple who had survived assassination attempts and bridged the gap between species was now carrying the first hybrid children in galactic history. The twins would be born with abilities from both parents, human adaptability and determination, combined with Vellani empathy and grace. They would be living symbols of what cooperation could achieve, proof that love really could overcome any barrier. But for June, the most amazing thing was simpler. He had volunteered for an arranged marriage to help his species, expecting duty and hoping for friendship. Instead, he had found the love of his life and was now going to be a father to children who would grow up in a galaxy where anything was possible. As he watched Kiravel sleeping that night, her skin glowing softly with contentment, June realized their story had become something neither of them had planned, the greatest love story of their generation. The exploration ship Unity was unlike anything that had ever been built before. Half the design came from human engineering, tough, practical, built to survive anything the galaxy could throw at it. The other half was pure Vellani artistry, flowing lines that seemed to bend space itself, systems that responded to thought, as much as touch. It was the perfect symbol of what humans and Vellani could accomplish when they worked together. June stood on the bridge, watching the final preparations for their departure. 2 years had passed since his wedding day, and sometimes he still couldn't believe how much his life had changed. He was no longer just a diplomat trying to keep peace between species. He was an explorer, a father, and the co-leader of the most ambitious mission in galactic history. "Final systems check complete," reported Lieutenant Kim from the human crew. "All departments ready for departure. Harmonic resonance aligned," added Velnara from the Vellani team. "The ship sings with perfect balance." June smiled at the different ways his 2 crews described the same thing. After 2 years of working together, he had learned to translate between human technical language and Vellani poetic descriptions. Both meant they were ready to venture into the unexplored regions beyond the galactic rim. The mission was ambitious, even by the standards of their success-filled marriage. They would spend 6 months exploring star systems that no one had ever visited, looking for new worlds that could support life, new resources that could benefit all species, and maybe even new civilizations that could join the growing alliance of peaceful worlds. But the most precious cargo on the ship was in the nursery 2 decks below. June's children, Min and Hannah, were 6 months old and already showing signs of their unique heritage. Min had inherited his father's curiosity and his mother's empathic abilities, while Hannah displayed Vellani grace combined with human determination. The ship's medical team was fascinated by how the twins seemed to communicate with each other without making any sound, sharing emotions and even simple thoughts in ways that neither species could fully understand. "They're going to grow up among the stars," Kiravel said, joining June on the bridge. Even after all this time, she still took his breath away. Her pregnancy had changed her, making her skin glow with new colors, deepening her empathic abilities until she could sense the emotions of the entire crew. "Is that a good thing?" June asked. It was a question that had been bothering him lately. Was it fair to raise their children on a spaceship, away from both human and Vellani homeworlds? "Look around you," Kiravel said, gesturing to the bridge, where human and Vellani crew members worked side by side. "This ship is their homeworld. These people are their family. They'll grow up knowing that cooperation is normal, that differences between species are something to celebrate, not fear." If summoned by their parents' conversation, Min's babbling voice came through the communication system from the nursery. The sound made half the bridge crew smile, regardless of which species they belonged to. The twins had become everyone's children, proof that the future held unlimited possibilities. "All stations report ready," announced Commander Torres Junes. "Second in command." "Awaiting your orders, sir." June looked at his wife, his partner in everything they had accomplished. 2 years ago, he had volunteered for an arranged marriage out of duty to his species. Now he was leading a mission that would have been impossible without the trust and cooperation their relationship had inspired. "Take us out," he ordered. "Let's go see what's waiting for us out there." As the Unity engaged its hybrid propulsion system and jumped to faster-than-light speed, June thought about the message they would send back to Earth and Velen Prime in 6 months. It would tell the story of new worlds discovered, new friendships made, new possibilities opened up by the simple act of choosing love over fear. But the real legacy was already aboard the ship. 2 children who would never see species differences as barriers, and a crew that had learned the same lesson their parents had discovered on their wedding day. Sometimes the best adventures begin with a leap of faith,